Hard Hat's all about showing up to play hard, doing what it takes to win.
If you want to cement legacy, win another.
He's your third center.
You don't want to pump him up too much, but it's hard not to.
This is maybe the most I've ever agreed with you.
So I'll just ask everybody here, with the kind of week away, how's everybody's outlook changed a little bit in terms of what we were feeling and thinking about, what needs to be done or what's going to be done versus kind of where your head is at now? And again, you guys have done multiple podcasts with lots of different people, many of whom really fully, get the cap and understand the reality here. Where's your head at? We'll start with you, Noah.
Oh boy.
Oops, on mute.
Jeez.
This
is a hot start for everybody. Am I back?
Bobby, we'll start with you.
Yeah, my thinking hasn't changed too much. I want to see them go into next year and try to be competitive. Jimmy's muted.
No, I'm not.
Oh, you're just moving.
Because you ignored me.
I want to see them go into this year and try to compete, and that's probably easier said than done. They're gonna have to shed off multiple parts. Didn't we
just say we got past that? We're past that, right?
I'm not. And
no?
Again,
okay.
The only thing that I think prevents them from doing that is if they want to dodge the tax.
Is reality.
There's some merit to it. It's going to be ugly if that's the route they want to go here. I wouldn't have much hope for next year if that's the route that they need to go by the time the season starts. But I just don't think there's a lot of urgency with a lot of these moves. Now, I think there's some urgency to get a Jrue job done, Jrue trade.
That sounds weird.
I think there's some urgency to get a Sam Hauser trade done here. So, those two moves probably get you under the second apron going into the year. And then from there, I'm taking Porzingis into the season and seeing where that thing goes. I'm not trading Brown unless something highly unexpected comes up there. So that's pretty much where I was at before, and that's where I'm at now.
Oh, so Bobby hasn't moved. Okay, Noah, how about you?
And Luke's coming back.
Luke's coming back, really?
You are just
Bobby's bringing the band back.
And you were just go. I love it. Okay, I like it. I'll jump in later. Noah, go ahead.
John, you're not gonna like it
later.
What? Oh, you're even more bullish
now?
Oh, you're scared? Or you're scared of me?
I'm scared of you.
Yeah.
So it's just seeing how things went for Bobby upon his first deal. So honestly, I don't think they're gonna tank. Which is that what you're headed, John? Is that where you want this to
No,
go?
not at all. That's not at all where I'm headed. I'm just. It's not where I'm headed. I'm literally.
That's where you started.
I am literally only looking at math and nothing else. But go ahead.
The thing is to get under the second apron. So I'll admit I was a novice at the second apron 2 weeks ago. I'm now like third grade, so I'm getting there. But honestly, a couple of things that I realized. One, it's actually not going to take like that much to get under the second apron. Like we're talking about 22.7 million. It's really not that much. You get rid of one or two of these contracts and get smaller pieces back, and you don't need to match the money, which I didn't realize. I genuinely did not understand how that worked.
Yes and no, depending on who you trade with.
Right, with a lot of
you're going to need Brooklyn, which is scary.
You don't necessarily need Brooklyn. Everyone needs Brooklyn.
Not need Brooklyn, but anybody in the not over the cap or not above the first apron, they still have to send salary out. It doesn't have to match exactly, but but there's still salary. There's only so much you can save on each player, unless somebody can absorb the whole contract, which is not a lot. But yeah, go ahead. There's so much to it. There's a lot of.
So I think the main thing there's like a couple of different layers to this. The biggest one is that we don't know anything about what this new ownership group is like. We really have no idea. We know that Bill Chisholm is a Celtics fan. Like that tells me nothing, right? I don't know if he's going to be an owner that is now looking at this as a perfect opportunity to start spending way less money because next year is already a throwaway year. So like, why not, trim payroll as much as possible? Don't pay any luxury taxes and go there. Like it's possible. We'll never know if the Tatum injuries like cover, I guess, for that. So that's the one piece is we don't know what ownership is like, this new group. But I think that they have enough talented players on this team that they're going to try to keep this team to be as competitive as possible, because when Tatum comes back, like I don't think they're going to want the year before to have been like all these new players, all these young guys, like kind of a total reset. I just don't see that happening. So I'm kind of still where I was soon after the season. And
Interesting.
I understand the salary cap a lot better than I did.
Jimmy?
Okay, so I'll preface this by saying I do not understand the salary cap the way Noah or Bobby probably do. John, I'm not sure what you know. You act like you know it, so maybe you do know it. I'm going to act like I don't know it, but I will say this. About the current state of the Celtics team. Obviously, the Tatum situation complicates things dramatically because you do have what appears to be some level of I don't know if you want to call it a bridge year, a gap year, a down year, a retool year. Next year, you guys can hope and pray as much as you want to think that the Celtics team is going to be like quote unquote competitive. I just don't see how that's possible. Your best players out at least for the regular season, most likely the playoffs if they even get to the playoffs, which they should be able to maybe sneak their way in. But the money situation, and this is why it's so complicated. The money situation is obviously number one here. With the new ownership, they're towing the line of making financially smart decisions and also not wanting to make enemies out of the fan base who don't really understand the cap or don't want to understand the cap and just want to watch a competitive, fun, interesting team. They don't want to see a new ownership group come in and strip it of all of that and make it something that it hasn't been in 25 years, which is borderline unwatchable. I don't see I don't see that happening. So I agree with you guys on that point. But I think I'm a little bit lower on my faith that this team is going to resemble as much as you guys do of this season. I think there are going to be some drastic differences here. And if, we're going to get into some trade scenarios later, but there are a couple that I think would be like Hail Mary options, to be completely honest, that would save you from, the worst case scenario, which is just be losing guys and selling off guys and attaching assets to guys in order to get under this threshold here.
Yeah. And that's the scary part to me is they don't have much control here. They need teams to help them out. They need teams to want to do business with them. The two reports that we're going to get into here kind of feel like wishful thinking to me to some degree. And I love both of those scenarios, but does Dallas actually want Jrue Holiday? Does LA actually want Jrue Holiday? If they don't, and no other team does, that's where you start getting into more difficult decisions here.
I guess I'm a little surprised that's where we are here, because I thought the general reality of what was likely to happen, not what's possible, is, again, you need teams to basically be stupid and to do something unforeseen, because raise your hand if you're a team out there that wants to add payroll. Like, zero teams. Like, everyone's looking to get cheaper and shed. No one's looking to take on $35 million, $30 million veterans at all, anywhere in the league, nowhere, not without sending out some money. So no matter, this is where I'm really confused. The reality is that when you trade Holiday and his $33 million or whatever that is, you're going to take back. There are some teams that are under the cap that could not have to worry about that, and they could, but they don't. I don't think they want to do that either. Go ahead, Noah.
Only Brooklyn is actually under the cap.
Only Brooklyn is. If you are under the over the cap but under the first apron, you have some flexibility there too. But there's still some level of matching. So at most of the teams that you're going to trade for on something like Holiday, when you trade him, you're going to get worse players and you're going to save about $7 million. So hitting that 22 is really hard. It's not a single move trade. It's a multi-move thing that you have to do, which includes the Hauser is an almost certainty because a team can fold him into an into a mid-level thing, and you don't have to take money back.
He's valuable. People are going to want him.
He has some value, so that's an almost automatic. It seems like, because that's 10. It just gone off the books. You're giving him for nothing. You're just getting rid of $10 million. But trading Porzingis or Holiday is going to net you about $7 million each, and you're still you trade all three of those guys. That's getting you under just that first apron. The problem with trading Porzingis is you can't get under the first apron next year, because that's where you could just let him walk. So there's a danger to trading Porzingis to only save yourself $7 million unless you're getting expirings back. So that's what I don't get is it's simple. Every team out there, if they're going to trade for something more expensive, they're going to give you worse shit. So the players coming back are going to be worse, and you're not going to save that much money. That's where I'm a little lost is you have to clear this out. You have to clear out multiple players unless Brooklyn absorbs something, and Brooklyn's not absorbing anything unless it's Brown or White. And, and then you're going to just basically be giving their salary away there too. And that's not going to make you better. It's just going to get you out of the tax. So that's what I'm saying is I don't see the scenario where it's okay. Like, it's not going to be one player. It has to be multiple players unless you trade. Am I seeing it wrong?
It depends on the tax.
It's just simple math. Like,
it depends
if
on
you're
the
trying
tax.
to get under that first tax, to save $22 million, you have to trade multiple players because you're going to be taking money back.
Right. But multiple players could be Jrue Holiday and Sam Hauser too. Like,
it could, but that's not going to get you there. You have to make another move also. And again, you could do that later in the year.
It could get you there in a couple of steps.
You might have to trade Pritchard too, and nobody wants to do that because that's an incredibly valuable contract. So
right. I mean, they're not going to control a lot of these opportunities, and that's the challenging part is, what's going to be out there for them? What bigger deals emerge? I think a lot of these are going to be money moving in many different directions. So that's hard to foresee.
Yet, huh? Like, the only clear way out is trade.
I have a million different trades.
I know, right, but the only clear way out is to trade something you don't want to trade. That's where I figured eventually people will get there and understand, like, Jaylen's.
Well, what people need to understand is these trades are going to suck. These are not going to be good trades for you. Yeah, yes. They're going to hurt. They're going to not return good stuff. So I think that's where you have to get your expectations adjusted a little bit here. I think all you can do
that's where I'm a little confused on the still, like, in Brad We Trust thing out there, because I did think people kind of had finally gotten over that and like, okay,
I think
Brad can only do so much here, like his hands are really tied because everyone is trying to save money. So everyone wants to get rid of their shit. If they're going to slightly upgrade with yours, that's great, but they're going to be getting rid of their salary. They're going to be getting salaries too. You're not going to find deals where people just take on. It's just mathematically impossible. There's no teams that can do it. So no matter what, you're not saving a lot, but you're going to be losing a lot on the court. That's where I thought we'd all kind of landed. Like, okay, now we get it. It's going to be bad, at least for a year.
Yeah.
Do we not think so? Jimmy, do we think there's a path to being competitive next year?
Well, here's the question. I want to see how you feel about this, Jimmy. Is there value next year in just being competitive? And that means what? Second round, conference finals, maybe, if you really peak into some surprising performances across the board. Is there still value in staying above water to that degree? Because I think we can all sit here and agree they are not winning a championship next year in any scenario. So if it's championship or bust, do you take a step back? I think you have to explore it. I think you have to think about what that would look like. There's probably a couple of different ways that you could go in that direction there. But like Noah said earlier in the show, I think there's a potential to have such a demoralizing season if you do take that step back, that what's left over the following year isn't necessarily going to be a quick turnaround. Like, that could be a multi-year process.
It's just whether there's another option. It's more medicine than it is anything. Like, if there is another option, I think everyone wants to explore it. Like, everyone would rather keep everything, not blow it up, be relatively competitive.
You have to pay to do that. That's all.
Really in return.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so I guess what comes down to the great unknown of the owners, they could come in here like white knights and say, we don't care. We'll deal with the penalties. We're not going to tank this team. And that changes the entire scenario. But raise your hand if you think that that's happening.
I have no idea. That's the question.
That is a big question. People. Yeah.
I don't know.
And
these
nobody
people.
does.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why it's like, if this new ownership group is coming in to try to make as much money and save as much on a luxury tax, and they view this as like the perfect storm, and the Tatum injury gives them an opportunity to do that with relatively much less backlash than they otherwise would have gotten, then sure, this team is they might get rid of everybody we know and, totally lean into the tank and try to get some draft picks and young players and be really bad next year and see what they can build assets for the future. Like, it's possible. I don't have any reporting that suggests that that's what this new ownership group wants to do. So I'm just thinking, if I was a billionaire who bought a team and thought to myself, like, am I going to try to make my team immediately terrible? Like, I think there's a certain level of, you also want to start this thing on the right foot. And I don't know that a tank year in Boston is that. I think, honestly,
we have survived a lot of them.
Yeah.
We've survived a lot of tank years. Like, the fans come back. Yeah. But I'm saying, like, in multiple sports, when they come down with the idea that you're coming back up, people hang around. What you don't want to see is a team just put its hands in its pockets forever, never go above. That's another scenario. If the ownership group is like, we're never going into the tax again, we've got a problem. That's the type of stuff that turns fans off. A John Henry with the Red Sox scenario, like, we're just not going to spend until we're certain we can win it. That drives people nuts. So if you have an ownership group that's roughly like the last one ran it, which is, we'll go all in when we have to, and we're here to spend and all of that stuff. Absolutely. That's much better. But, the thing that scares me, Noah, is Wick laid the groundwork after the sale was done. He's doing a series of interviews and he's saying things like,
they're going under the second apron.
No one's ever going to be in the second apron. I think, like, very smart money without knowing these guys is they're going to get under the second apron this year. With almost certainty. They're not coming in here to spend $280 million in tax in year one. I think that that's unrealistic. So even getting under the second apron goes back to my original scenario of trimming $23 million off this payroll is challenging without borderline gutting the roster. And you have to factor in gutting the roster plus being without Tatum because you view him as a loss for next season, plus whatever other players you lose. You're losing chunks of your team for next year. I think that's the mathematical reality of what we're facing.
I think there's two other factors.
So
go ahead.
Yeah, I'll say something, I guess, before this show ends. But what I want to say is a couple of things. Bobby asked me a few minutes ago, is there value in competing? Yes, there is. However, there's a lot more value to it if the team that's competing is sticking around after that year. So without knowing what that roster is going to look like 2 years from now, does it really matter if you're going to, quote unquote, compete just to keep the locker room up? I mean, obviously you want to build a winning culture and you don't want to end up with years and years of losing. But if you're doing it with players that you see that you're going to stick around in that future, then yes, there's certainly value to that. If you're doing it just because, hey, let's maybe make the playoffs and maybe get passed around, sell some playoff tickets and whatever, then I don't necessarily think it's worth it. I think on the other hand, you would strip some of those players off the roster a little bit. It's supposed to be a pretty good draft next year. Maybe in those trades, if you do trade player or two of value and you acquire picks back, that is a way to, again, rebuild in a sense. We've seen Wick's ownership group make huge franchise altering decisions. I mean, the one that had sent Pierce and Garnett out of town to Brooklyn, they could have gone a number of different ways going into that next season. They could have ran it back with those guys, knowing that they were going to need a couple extra pieces and knowing that they were towards the tail end, but they got that opportunity, almost like a Hail Mary opportunity from Brooklyn, and they took advantage of it, and the fan base was shook. It happened on draft night. A-Shot Blakely, I think, was actually first to report on it, and we all know what happened after that. So Wick isn't scared of making major moves like that. So while Tatum is off limits because he's the face of the franchise, basically, and because, there you go, I don't know what that is, but there it is. There we go. While Tatum is off limits, also because of the injury, of course, I would say everybody else is on limits. And just knowing that if they can find a way to get under that apron and take back assets and take back, whether it's young players or picks, to offset the thought of them just doing it for tax purposes, I would not put that past them. And that might mean parting with actually really good players that people want. What, John?
Stuff like this I find odd. It's like we weren't alive like 10 years ago. Like the current Celtics are built on a tank. Like They are built on a team
a Brooklyn tank.
They blew up a team that had no more path to winning, granted because of age, to go into the tank to acquire assets that got you Smart and Brown and Tatum. They exist because they waved the white flag at the right time. Like,
yeah, that's not the whole story, though.
It is the whole story. It's what
they got Smart and Rozier out of the tank. They got Brown and Tatum out of Brooklyn.
Again, they got Brown and Tatum. It's
years later, Bobby.
It's the smart move. You traded your big three to Brooklyn. You cashed in those picks later. You decided we're going down. This ship is sinking.
It didn't mean it meant it was part of the rebuild that you have to go.
Yep. We're gonna get rid of this.
But those guys were in their late 30s, Jimmy.
Since 2008, how many years do you consider ourselves a tank?
It's not what I'm saying is they recognized in this it's not the situations are not the same. And again, even the great lament for Red Auerbach was not breaking up the big three earlier. And then they took a dip after that because they held on to things too long. And that's, a well-told story from back then with the original big three, but it's not the same. Those guys were old. I'm not comparing the situations, but here you have a confluence of events with the CBA and Jason Tatum being injured and all of these things where you have to recognize we're shut down for a couple of years. There's no path. We can tread water or we can go down and come back up again. And that's people are saying it's negative and tanking, and that's just not in our DNA. I think it's just smart business. Like, recognize it's not happening here, but let me build for 2 years from now, 3 years from now, when the window can open. Because again, the beauty of the CBA, and we've talked about this here, is right now people are picking your bones. You're the expensive team, and people are going to come for your stuff and get it cheap, and it's going to hurt you, and they're going to get stuff they don't deserve, and you're just going to have to see it walk out the door, and it's going to suck. And you can't keep a championship core together, which is bullshit and really annoying that this is how the league is constructed now. Just as your players are hitting their prime, you have to tear it apart because that's how the league is built. But what comes around goes around. In 2 years, there's going to be another Celtics or another couple of teams out there.
Oklahoma City might even get hit.
Oklahoma City's going to get there too in 2 or 3 years. We're done. We're cooked. We got to get rid of guys who wants them, and you'll be in a position to get them there. Like, you're setting yourself up for success. I don't know what hanging on and treading water necessarily does here, because it's going to be really hard to build forward without assets and two max players.
Yeah, what are you going to offer?
How do you do it? It's like we're hoping for like fantasy Brad Magic Land. I don't know where. You have to get really, really lucky at that point. So are you going to resort to luck or other teams' stupidity, or do something proactive and say,
I think what's most important.
Look forward. Yeah,
I think what's most important this summer for them is not getting frivolous with their draft picks in terms of trying to offload money. Like, that might end up being what they need to do down the line, but I try to hold back on that for now. I like this Clippers idea that's floating around here because I don't think you're giving
we'll get into some of these. Yeah.
So I think that is like priority number one, because you need picks now, John. I was the trade every pick guy a couple of years ago. Now the landscape's different. You need those picks now. And they don't have a ton of them. So I would not be loose with that. I think you go in order of guys who are luxuries to guys who are necessities into the future. And like I've talked about, Jrue was an excellent piece for this team, an absolute cherry on top to a championship roster. This isn't a championship roster anymore. So I do think there'll be teams out there that do potentially want him as that. That's not this team anymore. Hauser, same thing. You could probably find another Hauser-like player in that position.
Let me ask you guys a question, because again, I think the NBA has made it perfectly clear, just based on how the CBA is set up, you can't have two supermax players on a team and field a team. It might as well be at the top of the CBA. No team shall have two supermax players. Why is it that we think that the Celtics can and should retain both? This is where I'm stuck again. I don't get, like, this is clearly what it's built for. You can have them, but then you can have nothing else. And that'll work only if you had a crap ton of draft picks and were able to draft and develop a bunch of players who are on rookie deals or rookie extensions, and that fills out your roster. But you don't have that. So how do you survive in this current NBA climate with two supermax players? How do you build the roster?
Noah.
I mean, there's a couple things. I think, first of all, any decision that they make this offseason is going to depend on who is actually valued league-wide. And I also think we have very limited knowledge of that right now. Like, if there's a huge suitor for any one of the guys you don't want to trade, whether that's Derek White or Peyton Pritchard or Jaylen Brown, then I think that's what's going to push this team to make that trade, more so than like the Celtics are going into the offseason with like, these are the 3 guys we want to get rid of. I don't think it's going to be like that. I think it's all going to depend on demand from other
opportunity.
teams. Yeah. On the 2 supermax points, I'm just going to, like, again, I'm disclaiming this with that I'm still wrapping my head around the second apron and all of these rules as I'm reading through the 700-page CBA and talking to people and everything. But you can have 2 supermax players and you can actually be in the second apron, and it's not a total disaster if you're competing. Like, if this team had made the finals this year, I would be saying there's no reason for them to get out of the second apron next year, except for if they want to be cheap, because the basketball penalties are actually not as punitive as I thought going into it.
The draft pick one kind is for them.
It's not if you think you're going to be competitive.
It's not. Like, if you know you're going to field a good team year after year, you can live with those penalties.
So
it becomes down to money.
Yeah. And again, I'm fully disclaiming, when I usually have basketball takes, I'm very confident in them. I'm saying I'm still putting the pieces together on this. My interpretation right now of the second apron is that it's actually not as punitive from a basketball standpoint as is being discussed. If you actually go through each provision, and there's a number of them, including the 7 years later, you can't trade that pick. Your first round pick gets moved to the end of the first round, which it's been the end of the first round every year in recent years. So that one doesn't necessarily matter. It makes it harder for you to make trades because you can't combine players and make a trade. If you want to do a full debrief, I had Keith Smith on my podcast who really explains it. But basically, if you're going to be competitive, it's okay to remain in this position.
Are they going to be competitive?
It just doesn't make sense. It's just really hard to make moves in this position. So right now, this is like the hardest point. They can't really make a lot of moves right now because they are above the second apron. But they can, as long as they're out of the second apron by the end of the moves, it's okay. So like, they can combine players right now in a trade as long as the end result is that they're below the second apron. So my point is that you don't blow up the team because of the basketball penalties. You blow up the team because the ownership group is not willing to pay luxury taxes.
It's definitely the money. Yes.
I've always said that about the second apron in general.
Yeah. Right. So I just want to put that out there though, because I feel like I went into this offseason thinking the second apron, you're debilitated as a team. It's just the fees. And the question is, are you going to pay a lot of money for a team that can't compete next year? But also, are you going to tear down an entire team because you don't want to pay that money because you think that Jason Tatum's going to come back the year after and be the savior? And my biggest reservation with this idea that you're just punting a year and he's going to come back and he's going to come back and bring you back to contention within a year or two is that we just don't know what he's going to look like. And I'm saying that, like, I do think that he's going to be fine, but I wouldn't look at Jason Tatum coming back as like all your problems are going to be solved. He's always had great players around him, and that was pre-injury. So that's why I think you're going to try to field the competitive team as possible. I think they're going to be on the market for stars. Like, I do think that Brad Stevens is going to see if he can make a splash here. And like, that's obviously like seems kind of unlikely right now, considering where you're at and how hamstrung you are compared to other teams. But I don't think they're going to look at it as like, we can just be bad for a year and then Tatum's going to come back and we're going to be good again, because that's just like, this is such a tenuous situation. And like the Achilles thing, there are so many different outcomes to how players return, and you don't know which guy he's going to be.
Yeah. And again, exactly that. There's no, like, you could live with the penalties if your team is set year in, year out, and you're
that's
just going to
how you feel a year ago. I don't know if you feel that way now.
No, I'm saying, who cares? You freeze picks and this and that, like,
right, like
whatever.
I thought you're the picks guy, John.
What I'm saying is, if you're contending for titles now, Bobby, I mean, come on. They're
not contending for titles now.
That's why you blow it up. But if you are, it's not about the restrictions. It's about the money. When you're not, an owner's like, I'm going to pay all this for this. Like, it doesn't make sense. So you understand why they're going to do it. And also, again, just reading the tea leaves with what Wick said, Wick's going out there and talking about the penalties. And he doesn't mean the penalties. He means the money. And I'm sorry, he's setting the stage for what's likely to happen with the new ownership group, which is like, nobody's going to deal with those penalties. Like, okay, we get it. Like, no one wants to pay that much money for a team now. It's insanely punitive, and they have to get out from under it, and they have to be out from under it for 2 years. So it's
scary.
It's challenging.
If it is the money, that's scary, because that's gonna hurt bad. And that's
It
where you're
is, but it's
rebuild.
this much money. Like, again, there's a difference between paying 30, 40, 50 million in tax, which a lot of teams are going to do to be competitive, versus 280 million, which you more than double your payroll. No one's doing that. Like, I don't care who it is. Like, nobody's blowing that much money on a team without guaranteed return on investment. Like, this is a championship team, but you're not that next year. There's almost no incentive to do that next year.
You're
in
not
a scenario
that next year, but you also know that, I mean, let's be honest.
And 2 years from now, look at the age of these guys. Yeah, go ahead.
There it is. I was going to say, let's be honest. I mean, they're probably not, quote unquote, trending in the direction that ownership or anybody wants them to be trending in. And that has to do with age. That has to do with maybe the style of play. That has to do with some of the pieces around, Tatum and Brown. You've got guys going in different directions right now. And so when you take a look at the makeup of this team, all those reasons, why would you pay that extra amount of money? The window, we basically kind of said the window was like last year and this year. We never really jumped ahead to like, oh, can they go back to back to back? Nobody was thinking that. Everybody was thinking that this team could go back to back if they stayed healthy and if a few things fell their way. It didn't.
And if you go back to back, maybe consider trying 3.
Exactly.
No.
Back to back. Yeah.
Dream scenario. Everybody reasonable said year one of the Tatum extension kicking in, this team's going to have to do some serious shit. Everyone saw the $500 million bill coming 2 years ago.
Right, but that's what I'm saying.
But fans say stuff like, if they win, maybe they'll run it back. That doesn't work that. Like,
I still think there would have been an outside chance, though, if they could have gone. If they win back-to-back this year, they had the opportunity. And, I mean, John, if they go back-to-back this year, they are one of the greatest teams of the last 20 years based on how difficult it is to do that. It's not that easy to just blow it up. And if you're ownership, to blame it on a frozen draft pick or a draft pick that gets delayed or whatever the hell it is. It wouldn't be that easy to do that. It would have to be about money. And I don't think the new ownership group would very easily be able to stand up there and blow up the team or to sell off pieces that just won a championship. You'd get a ton of pushback. Now it's not the case. Now they have a number of reasons why they can sell off. They can claim that it has to do with the sanctions that put on them, but no, it has to do with the fact that Tatum's out for the year. Holiday's another year older, and he looks like he's got some nagging injury stuff. Porzingis, we haven't even said his name, but nobody knows what the F is up with Porzingis. I don't even know how
he's
you could
chilling
trade him
right now.
Don't know how you could trade him, and if you do trade him, I mean, from an X's and O's standpoint, by the way, you have no center, so that's another story. But there's just
all three are gone.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that put them in a completely different scenario than if it went a little bit differently to end this season. So I'm with you, John. I do think that there's, aside from a pie in the sky trade that comes out of left field, I don't think that they have a lot of options right now. I do think that if they did let's say if they did repeat this year, we're having a completely different conversation. And it does come down to money, but it comes down to whether or not you're willing to pay for it. If you look at this roster, knowing the way it ended, looking at some of the way the players finished off the year, you can make a much stronger case to not bring back this team than you can to bring back this team.
Right. No, it's fair.
If you go back to back and then the ownership trades off 3 core pieces, like the ownership is going to get
exactly my
popular
point.
People in the States. So it is. They have a
that's what Wick's there for.
Here to save money. Yeah.
And that's
Wick's
fine.
Wick's there as a human shield right now.
I don't think anyone should look at a year where you don't have Tatum and say they should pay $200 in tax. Like you can level that down to some degree. And honestly, the most realistic scenario I looked at here, where you're trading Holiday, taking back a little bit of money, you're trading Hauser outright, and you're trading Porzingis, taking back a little money. If you want to keep White, if you want to keep Brown, you probably have to pay a little bit of tax. I'm thinking like 10 to 15 million. And can you do, I know you're still going to be in repeater land after that, and that's tough. I know you're still going to have to pay indefinitely into the future to have 2 supermax players, as you said, John. But I think you can't tear it down completely. Like you still you can't have Tatum come back and have no one left. You can't have no hope of competing when Tatum comes back, because guess what that's going to lead to? Tatum walking in the door in a year and having another rough season and going,
No,
yeah,
I know.
Doesn't it allow them
I think I'm good with Boston.
Well,
But it's
doesn't
just-
it allow them to do things though. I mean, next offseason is a completely different situation, Bobby. I mean, you don't just automatically go into the next season after this one with the same roster. I mean, aren't they going to open themselves up to be able to?
Well, a lot of it's going to come down to drafting. A lot of it's going to come down to shrewd
But trade
moves.
wise, though, I mean, if John said earlier,
trade-
there's going to be a team that's going to be in the Celtics position.
Yeah.
That's going to have to sell off guy. I mean, like there
that's
are
what,
ways for them to come back soon. Maybe the landscape of the NBA. I want to ask you guys two questions. The first one was going to be, do you like the way the CBA is designed? Do you like the current state of the NBA and that it does force teams to sell off players and it does force players to jump around and all this stuff? Because I don't really like it, to be completely honest with you.
No, it doesn't make sense because they put in a provision in supermaxes to keep players with their teams.
Right. That's
So
what
you're
I was gonna
paying an
say.
enormous
You pay
amount of
way
money for
more,
that.
and then you
Yeah,
have
they
to
just
get
don't want you to have two of them.
And then you get penalized on the other side of it. And yeah, you're
And
right,
you're-
John. Like,
And you're
The
rewarding
provisions-
teams that
Team
did
has no
nothing right.
choice but
That's
to
the
sign
worst
them.
part. For the sake of parity, you're rewarding a bunch of teams that have done everything wrong, drafted poorly, couldn't get people to sign there, and you're just handing somebody else's good hard work to them completely unearned, undeserved. That's what
Mhm.
bothers me the most is like this, like, sure, the Celtics did take advantage of other teams trying to shed salary. But that's always going to happen with teams that are on the way down, right? The Celtics are a team that should be on the way up or at least level with their core and forced to break it apart. That's a travesty. So that's a crappy element of this CBA is the Celtics should be a team that should just be, look, here's who we are. We built this. We got it. Come get the belt. And instead, you got a 2 to 3 year run and you're
Right.
done in
sucks.
the
One
prime
and a
of your
half.
players. And other teams are going to benefit for sucking, for tanking, for making all the wrong moves, all the wrong trades, and drafting poorly. And they're just going to get guys for free now, which is crazy. Noah?
No, I was just gonna say, I think, like in an ideal world, in my opinion, maybe I'm just old fashioned when I think about this. Players should be staying in the same place for as long as possible. We should have way more players than we currently have that finish their career where they were drafted. Like watching Celtic City, I was like, damn, like that just never happens anymore. Like,
I
you see
agree.
everybody just gets turned for picks, and I get it. And sometimes it's really smart, like when Pierce and KG did it. But this CBA clearly disincentivizes that. Like there's no incentive to drafting multiple stars and being able to retain them. And I think that'll be adjusted ultimately. Like
It
I
makes
do
it
think
much
that'll-
more into a business.
Like
for
we're in
both
the early
sides.
years here, and CBAs, get changed for a reason. And if you go back, like every time they do this, like they look at what went wrong and what didn't make sense. And to me, this is one of those things that just doesn't make sense. You want to incentivize teams to be able to keep that. The only thing I'll say is the money is in the media and the attention, and fans like trades more than anything. I've noticed that when I look at my page views for my stories, and when we see where's all the engagement, it's around the Luka stuff, and like fans love trades. They love movement around the league. So maybe my idyllic view of like how I want the league to be doesn't actually bode the most money for everybody
this also
involved.
makes it more complicated to do trades. Like there's a really exciting Giannis scenario that we might talk about in a little bit here, but honestly, when I looked into it, it just hit the brakes and said, "Oh, they can't do this."
No one's sneaking a vegan brownie by me, I'll tell you that.
Okay, you know what, John? We're gonna do it.
You have to feel that way too, Bobby.
I have to
Same.
feel that
Same
way.
to you.
Let's slide Al over and make Luke your first center.
Bobby, we gave you Luke hour early. We are not going to end this on a damn conversation about Luke